here to talk about FEMEs. Last night, I attended a talk by Richard Dawkins. He was asked numerous questions, and probably the best answer from my perspective that he gave was on why people criticize other people when they change genders, but not whenever they change, or whenever they change race, but not when they change genders. It's an interesting question. I hadn't thought of it before. But two questions that he could not answer were about the fine-tuning of the laws of physics, and then secondly, about the heat death of the universe. What he thinks that means. So, today I want to answer those questions. And it's nice because the potential resolution to those two questions is related deeply to Dawkins's work. He wrote The Selfish Gene. And what The Selfish Gene is a book about genes being selfish. So a gene is a unit of hereditary. It can determine something in reality, like the color of your hair. It interacts to cause the color of your hair. Certain genes can be selected through time. They exist in our body. That's what he talks about. But then he talks about how these replicators, genes are an example of a replicator, and he talks about how these replicators are what determine the form of basically all of our reality. Because they don't only exist in our bodies as genes, replicators also exist in our brains as memes. I can just talk about my actual paper here. So, memes are objects instantiated in the substrate of neural processing, and they interact to cause humans to do something, like give a thumbs up. When I do that thumbs up object is instantiated in another person's brain, and they can cause the transformation of creating that again. Same way the gene causes the transformation of the hair. That's how replicators work. They cause transformations. But yeah, I waited behind, went into the VIP area after, and told Dawkins about the FEME. So the FEME is what I believe exists in reality. We currently understand genes, memes, and then Temes. Temes are replicators in digital information. They cause the transformation of you being able to watch and hear this video right now. The information in silicon processing systems that's copied to this SIM card is then copied across the cloud, instantiated in your phone, causes you to listen to it. Then if you interact in order to cause that replicator to propagate by liking or sharing this video, that's how Temes work. So Temes means genes. The suffix "eme" means replicator, and then MTG, gene, meme, Teme. I propose FEME. Where does that come from? So we currently understand 3. I think there are 4 abstract replicators in reality. So why would I think that? The reason is because in 2011, David Deutsch, the father of quantum computing, published work on Constructor Theory. And he also wrote a book called The Beginning of Infinity. And what they talk about is how information is what defines what happens. Information can create novelty in reality, such as replicators. Like, our reality right now isn't one that has ever been existing before. It's a messy environment, and a bunch of replicators are constantly competing, dying, creating mutations of themselves, interacting. That's what's happening out there. So how do we make sense? How do we, as a small brain that's only like 10 centimeters cubed, or 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters, 1,000 centimeters cubed, how can that compute and interact with a reality that's so much larger, with such a larger information space? What you need to do is like reduce that reality down. So that reality is all computed by fundamental interaction, but then you can understand it at a higher level of abstraction. Examples being the game of life. This all relates together because it's all about what information is and what happens in information systems. That's what David Deutsch's and Chiara Marletto's Constructor Theory deals with. And it's related to physics, as we'll soon see. But what he talks about a lot in that book is the fact that this is the game of life. So what's happening here is there's a grid of cells. It's nicer when you can see the grid. There's a grid of cells. So it's a cellular automata. It's a grid of cells. Each one of them is updated by some row. It is dead or alive in the next updates, depending on how many of its neighbors are dead or alive. When you do that, this is the update row, the function game of life. It just says, how many neighbors do you have? And if it's this number, you're dead. If it's this number, you're alive, depending whether or not you're already dead and alive. Anyway, so every cell is updated by that row. 36 cells. So you need 36 computations. That's what this grey thing represents. Every time. And then you have this evolution of the game of life and the dead and alive cells. But you can abstractly analyze this system so that this object moves square root 2 grid cells diagonally every 4 iterations. So that's what numerical reducibility is. That's why our brains are weirdly powerful objects, because we can understand reality at a higher level of abstraction and then compute what happens in the massive world that's out there and understand patterns in it without actually having the same information density as exists in it. So that's what we are doing, like trying to run more efficient computations than is actually computed. But yeah, that's what David Deutsch talks about, that reality is an information system. And we can understand these general patterns. And what these general patterns are is that knowledge propagates. That's the basic property of information systems. By the way, information is defined here as anything with counterfactual potential, anything that could be different. So you gain some new information if you interact, and one of the possible futures are defined for you. You ask, what's going on here? And it gives you an answer and defines something. Like, are you going for a haircut? Yes or no? You probably should. Therefore, I'll go for a haircut. That's information. It's like, there's 2 possibilities. One of them is selected. It could have been different. But when you have a system that does that, information interacts through time. What happens is that knowledge evolves. So knowledge is just anything that tends to remain. The example is the glider object in the previous section. When you instantiate a glider on the game of life, it tends to remain. Simple as. So when you create something with information that interacts but remains after the interaction, it is a constructor that embodies knowledge. That's why constructor theory is called constructor theory, because it's a theory about the generalized dynamics of information theory. And the most important thing nearly in that, what defines it, is the propagation of knowledge. Knowledge is hard to vary and hard to come by because the majority of states of information aren't maintained. And then it is also parochial and fallible. If you change what some information interacts with, it may not constitute knowledge anymore. So if you change the update row from the game of life row and vary it, the glider no longer propagates. Also, the glider can interact with objects to be destroyed, as you can see here. That's equivalent to the no free lunch problem. It's basically a formalization of this in computer science, where no algorithm has universally superior performance over the space of all problems, because all knowledge is fallible. But yeah, that's just a background on constructor theory. But what happens is that when knowledge propagates, sometimes certain constructors can become replicators. Replicators allow for evolution. So the foundation of constructor theory is done. We've known about replicators since the 70s, like in Dawkins' talk last night. But my point is that they haven't been married yet. And when you do so, you have some interesting insights about physics that particular people like Lee Smolin have talked about. Okay, so this is actually a nice way to do it. The answer Dawkins gave last night to, is the universe fine-tuned for life? What's the solution to the fine-tuning problem? So he answered it by saying the fine-tuning problem is the problem of why the universe has a form that is conducive to the evolution of life. If you change the mass of an atom, you couldn't have life on Earth. So there are a bunch of other constants in physics that seem fine-tuned for life. And he said, yeah, I don't know, anthropic principle, which is an idea like there are loads of universes, we're just one of them. And then he said, Lee Smolin actually talks about how evolution could resolve the fine-tuning, because we don't ask why the genes have the form that they do, even though there are ChatGPT is more appropriate for this, I would say. Also, ChatGPT is a terrible calculator. Anyway, how many genes are there? Three billion base pairs. Base pairs, not three. Yeah. So there are 3 billion base pairs on the human genome. That seems fine-tuned to survive in the human embryo, but the explanation is evolution. Lee Smolin in the 80s had the same intuition. So Lee Smolin, he's this guy, cool guy. Lee Smolin, cosmological evolution. So he thinks that he proposed the idea that the universes have been selected for evolution because it basically solves the fine-tuning, but he didn't marry it with replicator theory and evolutionary theory in any formal way. He talks about black holes and that, and how black hole is the fitness function, but as we know, everything is fallible, so you can't say there's some continuous fitness function throughout all time. That's one problem with Lee Smolin's idea. Main problem is that he doesn't really propose a replicator. In a way, he does propose black holes, But black holes are so different from genes and memes, and that's it. I don't think it is accurate. Instead, you can formulate it the way I have done, which proposes some replicator that is a lot more similar to memes, genes, and temes exists in fundamental reality. And then you explain why the laws of physics propagate through time when you do that, and you also get 5 predictions. Or I've made 5 predictions. Okay, so what are replicators? They're a constructor that can cause a copy of themselves. So when you have replicators, you get evolution. In evolution, you have replication, selection, and variant of information. And then you get butterflies who pass on their genes. Butterflies are the phenotype. They're what's caused. They're the transformation that results from the interaction. For memes, the transformation that results is the thumbs up. For Temes, as we talked about, it is this podcast and the functionality of your home screen. But yeah, so how does this background relate to physics? Last bit of theory. Physics, we have this view in contemporary physics. Well, at least certain projects in contemporary physics do, like the Wolfram Physics Project. And the view is that the theory of everything is some fundamental information structure that interacts with our reality. And then we can numerically, reducibly parse this reality to give mathematics consistent with quantum mechanics and general relativity. But this picture has a problem. Why do the rows propagate through time? If we have the function game of life, that does not propagate unless you have the computer memory there to propagate it. So the computer memory, it is a replicator whenever you have the computer memory storing it, interacting to create it and cause the updates. That's why the function game of life propagates through time, because it is a replicator only whenever you consider the full environment where it is stored in the computer memory. But where is the theory of everything stored? The fundamental rule that interacts to cause our reality. It is not complete in this picture. But what is proposed in this work is that it is actually has the form of a replicator. So a replicator survives because it interacts to recreate itself. That's the view we are proposing in this work, that the theory of everything in fundamental physics is actually a replicator that causes itself to be recreated in reality after it interacts with the environment. So that's one way that you get this answer. The other way is just plainly by saying what happens in information systems. The answer is evolution. Therefore, if what existed before the Big Bang, we don't know. But we do know that if it resulted in an information system, it must have been an information system itself. What happens in information systems? Knowledge propagates. It is then embodied in replicators. Replicators evolve. Therefore, what happened at the point of the Big Bang? Replicators had evolved. I have called these replicators FEMEs, fundamental aims. And same way, genes interact to cause the specific evolution of organisms and animals, as we see here, and memes our reality and Temes other bits of our reality. The proposal in this paper is that FEMEs interact to cause the phenotype of the universe, to cause the form and dynamic evolution of our reality as well. So we have four abstract replicators. Fundamental here just means the lowest level. But okay, so predictions from this idea. FEMEs embody error-correcting codes. All replicators embody error-correcting codes. They can cause copies of themselves. They're fallible. So heat death will not occur. Information efficient, so many words is wrong. And knowledge and the capacity to support life is something that those FEMEs have been selected for. So I feel like that's it for this episode. This has been a pretty quick run through of the idea and background. Just a full-blown, here you go, here's my idea, here's what it's based on. If you watch this, you should be able to say, or I should be able to find out if the idea makes sense. So any feedback would be greatly appreciated. If you can pass it on to anyone who you think might be interested, that would also be greatly appreciated. The second question that Dawkins was asked last night that he failed to answer was, what is the heat death about? Will the universe go through a heat death? This work provides the answer to that also. The answer is no. Which is very, very good news. I'm happy about it. When I was a kid, I remember finding out about the heat death and being in the kitchen with my mother and being like, that's absolutely absurd. That's shocking. Like, how did you all know this? Surely we'd be getting on different if this was the case. Anyway, it just psyched me out a good bit. It's pretty nice that this work, and basically the work of David Deutsch in generalizing the dynamics of information systems, it explains that novelty is what exists and what will continue to exist in the future. Therefore, heat death is not going to happen. But yeah, the reason also is because the third prediction, FEMEs are fallible. So the laws of physics are not immutable. They will not propagate forever through time with their current form. All knowledge is parochial and fallible. The laws of physics here are proposed to be the transformations caused by fallible replicators. Therefore, they will not propagate eternally through time. Therefore, heat death will not occur. I was expecting to say, I'll go on to next week to answer Dawkins' second question, but I'm not sure that is necessary. Maybe more detail or something, but for now, that's the answer. Heat death isn't guaranteed because the laws of physics are embodied by fallible replicators that can be changed. But in order to formulate that answer properly, we'll need to discuss entropy and the second law of thermodynamics and how it is incomplete at the moment. That's what I want to write the second paper on / explain next week in the podcast. But yeah, cool. Thank you very much if a person listened to this. I am enjoying doing this. I might continue to do it on Fridays, talk about physics. Thank you.